Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Gurus, where every Friday we explore stories of international business and speak with industry leaders operating around the world. I'm your host, Philip Auerbach of Auerbach International. Thank you so much for joining us. As most of you know, we start each podcast with a running segment called Faux Pas Fridays, where we explore a funny blooper or mistranslation that does not quite convey the professional image that your organization should want to project. And since today's guest has started an amazing program about teaching English worldwide, I thought we would have a blooper from the country whose English is perhaps the worst in all of the signs from around the world, and that country is China, because their signs and their English leave a lot to be desired. There actually are whole books of Chinglish, as it's called. And this is an excerpt from one of those Chinglish books, and it's about I guess it's a toy. It's a stuffed animal or a cartoon or something, and it says "Fatty Cat Pippi," Pee-pee, P-I-P-I. Pee-pee is a very cute fatty cat. The Pee-pee cat likes to eat donuts. Its name is Pee-pee, a very fatty cat. Its favorite foods are fish, cake, and sandwich. The sports it likes most is to bite the navel, to bath. It is a very naughty cat. So with that, whatever all of that means, that's what it says. So today's guest is Dr. Liz Nuñez, an awarded consultant, strategist, coach, and educator who has been featured in numerous publications and journals. She is the founder of the consulting firm, The Pivot RX, and co-founder of English Speaking 101, as well as co-founder of the International Society of English Language Learners. And that is the largest private continuing education community and association worldwide, with over 1.5 million English language learners. She is creatively pioneering the future of English as a second language with her new neuropathology methods, and is helping diverse businesses pivot and scale in foreign markets with ease. Welcome, Liz. Pleasure to have you on our show.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here with you, Philip.
Thank you. So I normally dive in by asking guests to tell us a bit about your background and how you grew up, where you are now, and how you gained your global experience.
Yes. So I am a first generation American. So my parents immigrated from another country to the United States, and they came in search for that American dream and realized with their kind of spirit, or you pick up when you're moving from one country to another, you realize sometimes you've got to do something on an entrepreneurial effort to reach that. So they went through many entrepreneurial endeavors. And as a middle child, I was always the one there helping them with the paperwork and making sure they were compliant and translating things and making sure everything was the way it needed to be. So that was my taste in business. They were always pushing me to also continue and start my own business and do whatever I wanted, because over time they were able to have a lot of success. So for me, that was the drive to jump into business. However, I was kind of running away from it because I thought it wasn't for me. Oh. So from there, what I ended up doing was studying. I went to school. I went through a whole medical practice, became a doctor of medicine, and pushed myself in that. At the same time, I always kind of wanted to jump into education because my first language is English, but I first learned what we call the Queen's English because of where my mother had come from. Her father was British. So this is the English that I learned, and then had to relearn good old American English through my regular studies. So because of that, I've always had a love for language. It has haunted me, it has stalked me, and it has captivated me over the years. So I share that with others as well.
That's wonderful. And where is your father from?
The Dominican Republic.
Ah, okay. So did you grow up speaking Spanish as well?
Yes, we spoke both languages at home, mixed them, and did Spanglish as well.
As well. And does your mother speak Spanish at this point?
She speaks Spanish and English, yes.
Wonderful. Good. Um, Thank you. So I understand that you've worked in many countries around the world and have a consultancy uh, dealing with strategies about bringing foreign companies into the US or in English-speaking markets. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Tell me a bit about that and how that works and what countries you deal with.
So we've served various countries. We've worked a lot with businesses out of India, Bangladesh, Nepal, jumping into a lot of Arab countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the whole conglomerate, really, because when you start working with one of those countries, you start working with the others. It kind of becomes like a cousin effect. And we've also worked with a lot of Asian countries as well. Mostly what we do is, since I had experience from an early age developing a lot of strategies hands-on with a brick and mortar business, my parents' businesses started becoming something that became an international business because they started to delve in scrap and metal. So they actually started to import and export. So that was my jump into an international practice. So I help these companies understand how to shift, slightly pivot. That's what we say, like a gentle pivot that they need to make when they're jumping into these English speaking countries where the culture is different, the language is different, how we approach each other for business, the mindset is different. So we help them to bridge that gap and bring their team as well up to par.
That's fascinating. Can you give me some examples of how you did that, or with what countries you did that?
Right. So one of the things I can say at most is this concept of, I'm going to say respect, and they call it, being serious. In the United States, we would just say we're being professional, but for them, it's respect and seriousness. That's something that carries on throughout a lot of what we do. We try to explain to them that the laid backness that they see in Americans when it comes to professionalism is not a sign of a lack of seriousness in business. So we try to help them understand that the culture is a lot more laid back. People have the opportunity, for example, in some of these countries, if you directly translate how they call their mothers or fathers, they say sir and ma'am. And a lot of us in the United States, we just say mom or mommy or daddy or papa, like, so that really changes from an early age, how you transact with people. So that's one of the big things we work on, as well as helping them to, so what I mean by that is not undervaluing what they're seeing in this English market. It doesn't mean that it's not professional. It doesn't mean it's not serious and that people won't jump into working with you. They will. It's just going to look a little different on the surface, but underneath we all work the same.
That's fascinating. In which countries do people, I speak many languages, I've studied many languages, and I know, like, Senor, Senora, mein Herr, meine Frau, and so forth. In what countries or what languages do people refer to their parents as sir and ma'am?
So a lot of Asian countries do give that name in their home. They'll call their mom and dad, but when they're in front of others, they have titles and they refer to their parents out of respect with the title. A lot of Spanish speaking countries as well say señor y señora when they're referring to their mothers and fathers out of respect as well. So that's a big thing, all of South America and also into Africa as well.
So what you mean is when they're referring to their parents in front of others.
Yes.
Not what they do at the home. Yeah.
Some even do it at home, but it's not something that's as widespread.
Widespread. Yeah, that's fascinating. You mentioned about the seriousness and the respectfulness abroad versus sort of the laid backness in the United States. Are there other ways that you see that businesses are done differently, or business is done differently in other countries?
Oh, most definitely. So the approach, for example, let's say that I'm from another country and I'm going to get to know someone else for a business venture. the whole approach is not going to be like a wine 'em and dine 'em experience. I'm going to use that term because that's kind of an American thing. So we'll take them out for lunch, or it's happy hour. That is a very more laid back. And then right there in that same day, in that same conversation, you're already pitching them for business, right? That's a very American way. But when you're from another country, they want to get to know you. They want to get to know your family. They want to see how you are morally. Are you a person who commits and finishes with your commitments? So they're looking at a bigger scale of what you do with your company and who you are as an individual versus kicking back, having laughs, having a good time, and then seeing if it feels right or good, or if the numbers click the right way to then jump into a business venture.
Right. Yeah, this is the same theme that's resonated through other podcast guests, that Americans tend to be very transactional and plunge into business right away, whereas most other cultures outside of even North America, really, Americans and Canadians. The Canadians are a little more European, but not much. But it's basically, as you were saying, get to know you. Ultimately, do I trust you? Do I respect you? Can I value that what you say will happen, and so forth? Have you found, and that this the character of the person is much more important than the product, the price, the value, whatever the company is offering? Is that correct, as you would see
Yes.
it?
Yes, very much so. Sometimes price is not even mentioned. When
Right.
I am in a transaction with someone with an international business, they're just like, I like it, let's go. And we talk about that with not even with the owner of the company, with someone else further down the road.
Have you found, another guest had mentioned this also, that sometimes you're negotiating with the middle managers, and the middle managers, and you have great rapport and they agree to what you've suggested, whatever, but then it goes back to the CEO, and the CEO may reject it and you have to start all over again.
Yes.
Have you found that?
Yes, I have. I think having that experience and having an open mind to know that it's just kind of like, when you're a child and you ask your mother, hey mom, I want to go out with my friends. You're at first with your mom, she might be like, sure, but you need to ask your dad.
No, absolutely not.
Exactly.
Oh, come on, Dad. Mom said yes.
Exactly. Come on.
Or come on, Dad. Mom said yes. Yes, funny. I know you've done business in the Arab world, and to me that's very intriguing, especially because you're a woman. How have you been treated both as a woman and an American, and as a Latina woman? Do they treat you the same way as they would treat white men, for example?
I would say that I really don't know exactly how they would treat a white male because I haven't had that experience. However, I would say time is in my favor. These countries are becoming a lot more flexible and open-minded. And it's also in my favor, my scholastic background. So when I approach them, many of them are, in fact, I'm a brown shaded woman, and many of them are similar in my shade. So they actually don't look at me so much as per color, but more wanting to know my seriousness, my professionalism, how I portray myself. And I think it's also helpful just being very truthful, that I work with a firm of people instead of it's just me standing on my own. So I believe that if I was someone who just stood on my own alone, I may find more challenges than what I have found so far.
Many cultures, especially in Asia, East Asia, well, India as well, they value companies that have a long history, and that their interlocutor, the person they're dealing with, such as you, they would tend to respect you more if you're older and have gray hair, and you're still young and don't have gray hair and all of that, unless you diet, but I doubt it. So does your youthful appearance change anything in terms of the dynamics?
At first, it is very misleading. I actually have over 15 years experience with our consulting firm. And I do have to oftentimes explain that because there's a saying, African Americans say black don't crack. So because
Say it again, please.
they say black doesn't crack. So
Black doesn't crack, that's true, right.
so I look a lot younger than what I am. But it is something that I think because of a lot of changes that are happening, especially technologically, a lot of millennials are having an opportunity that they didn't have before to have a voice. And people are finding that, yes, perhaps our systems need a little bit revamping and a little bit of assistance from someone with a younger and different perspective. So it opens that door for me in a sense, again, as well, like I said, working in collaboration. If someone is younger, I would say working in collaboration with other people who are more experienced, who can vouch for you, really is something that's more helpful and something that I've used a lot over time as well.
That's fascinating. That's great. So you have a lot of, let's say, older business colleagues around the world?
I do. I think I'm an old soul. So the majority of my friends in general are maybe 15, 20 years older than me that I go back and forth with speaking. So it's been very helpful in that sense. I'm catching up to them.
That's great. And as they move up and out of the business field, then you will become the wise guru as well, the wise one.
Yeah, passing it on to the next generation, most definitely.
Can you give some examples of different cultural issues that you've encountered? Whether it's, I don't know, anything from dining and etiquette to greeting people, or the way behavior and assumptions and that sort of issues.
Yes, I definitely share. I am a picky eater. So a lot of business is done over food everywhere in the world, even if it's just getting to know someone. And it's offensive in many, especially Arab countries, to deny what they're offering you to eat. So that has been an issue where sometimes I will just have to stomach whatever it is that's being offered to me, or insist on the fact that I'm just not hungry. And try to instead nibble or taste things or push myself out of my comfort zone. As an American, we live in I want to say a Disney bubble where we kind of get and access whatever it is that we want. So having that mentality and then coming and dealing with other people who are showing me their delicacies and the things that they love and that they eat snake and things like this that for me are not my cup of tea.
Right.
But I'm there to try to show them, again, because this is an international business, I'm trying to show them my character. So I need to show them that I'm flexible. I need to show that I'm not stuck inside the four walls of my own experience, thinking that somehow I'm better and looking down at them, because that will reflect directly in my business transactions with them as well, where then they would think that I would be less honest, or that I may be treating them as a secondhand or a third-hand customer or client when they need to have the best treatment as possible, like anyone else.
That's fascinating. Yes. Have you ever come across any language barrier issues?
Most definitely. I think the biggest issue is with the translator present. For me personally, especially, there are things that people use when they speak, depending what country they're from. For example, I have a lower tone than most women do, or those who are around me with their voice. So what ends up happening, and I kind of wake up and go to sleep and the voice drops even lower. So depending where you catch me on the day, my voice may be lower. So as I speak with people, I find that their expectation of what a woman would sound like is a little bit different. So sometimes, for example, Asian countries, a Vietnamese woman, her voice is softer. She's sweet. So she's, "Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and it's such a pleasure to meet you. And they're really up here and really nice." Where maybe my voice is not like that. Or if they're a man and they're speaking, they want to have a guttural, very masculine voice. They want to pick up, they have that kind of a growl to them, depending where they're from. And so I will sometimes I've had to either be translating for someone or being translated to, and it'll sound like their voice is upset, or that they're argumentative, or that they're not happy about something. And then the translator tells me this, what they're saying, and sound completely different. And sometimes, as on the receiving end, you're doubtful as to how factual that translation is.
Right.
Because you're trying to pick up the body language and the tone, the pitch, the pace the person is speaking to you with. And your perception is American based. So you're thinking, if they're soft spoken, that means that they're not sure, they're insecure, or that they're less. If they have their voice projects more, they're more professional. If their pace is slow, they're more serious, what they're saying. So there's so many these are things I go through with a lot of people. There's so many small little boxes to tick off there that you can think someone is saying something differently in a different way from what you're picking up. Body language, facial gestures and expressions as well.
Have you found that the interpreters actually are not, they're interpreters, by the way. And
Yes.
people make this mistake all the time, and that's perfectly understandable.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interpreting is spoken communication, translation is written communication.
Yes.
So the interpreters, if you ask them, the counterpart seemed very angry, and you seem very calm as you're interpreting for me. Do you ever challenge the interpreters and ask, what was this person really angry about?
I have asked before, and just because there are some words that I can pick up in certain languages, so I have asked before, are they saying it as nicely as you're saying it? That's the question that I'll ask. And then, they'll answer me however it is that they feel, or sometimes they actually take out the time and explain to me that it's their cultural expression. It's not so much something for me to receive or to think of in a different light.
Fascinating. That's great. You mentioned about body language. Have you made a study of how body language works around the world? For example, Arabs are very much in your face. They're much closer than Americans are. Americans keep a distance of, at least a foot, if not sometimes 2 feet. With COVID, it's usually more. And other cultures, so people are much closer, or the expressions are much more, serious. You can't, with an East Asian, they tend not to smile a lot, and you can't really tell from facial expressions. How have you dealt with those issues?
Right. So what we try to make sure that people understand is that if you are trying to convey something that you would reflect with your body, it's best to put it into your words directly. So if it's copy that they're writing and it's going to be received in a written form, to be very expressive as to how you are feeling or what it is that you're trying to convey while you are conveying the actual message. So instead of leaving space for an interpretation that's wrong, especially when we're writing, oftentimes you have that disconnect because you're not picking anything up at all. But definitely just letting them know how you feel about something, let someone know. So for example, I would tell them, open up with how you're feeling about whatever it is that you're going to say. So for me, I'd say, I'm so excited to be here. This is great. And then I'll go into whatever it is that I want to say, instead of just being so cutthroat going to business and expecting them to pick up what they wouldn't pick up for me. Because even some signs are different. Like I'll say something native to my family. So like the OK symbol in the United States is, this symbol is not the same with the hands that you do, like if you're putting the 3 fingers up in a circle with your pointer finger and your thumb, is very different from if, let's say in the Dominican Republic, this is asking for a ride. So
asking for a ride.
Yes.
Like hitchhiking?
Yes, like hitchhiking. Mm-hmm.
Oh, fascinating.
So very different. So there's, things that are done very different. Like a thumbs up. I passed by a police officer once, and the police officer gave me a thumbs up. I was on my way to the airport out of a country, and he gave me the thumbs up. He's on the side of the road. I give him the thumbs up too, because it already makes me nervous. And I keep on driving, and then they start blowing whistles, calling all kinds of people, because that thumbs up to them meant for me to pull over. because they wanted to verify who I was, being driven to an airport at 5 a.m., somewhere. So then I had to show my passport and all of that. But we kept on going.
Which country was that?
In Nicaragua. We in Nicaragua, we kept on going because we were just like, hey, yeah, thumbs up. Good day to you too. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I assume you know about pointing, that Americans point with one finger, and that's considered extremely impolite in most cases. So I teach people, you point with your hand or your palm, you keep all the fingers together, you point with your palm up if you're going to point, or palm up or point out, but never with one finger, because in many countries like Brazil, I think that it's extremely impolite, shall we say.
Yes. These are hard things to learn as a basic traveler, much less when you're trying to jump into doing business with someone else. If you haven't had that experience, maybe you're a rock star or a maverick in your company, in your home space, but when you cross that border, it's like when COVID happened and everyone all of a sudden is on Zoom or on a virtual meeting, and then we're all feeling awkward. I wasn't, but many people were feeling awkward because they weren't used to being on camera, kind of speaking to yourself, so to speak. So,
right. What about the pace of business? Not the pace of business, but in many countries, like in Latin America, for example, traditionally there's the idea of the siesta, and therefore everything is slower. And in Spain as well, I think not so much anymore, since Spain joined not NATO, the EU. Duh.
Yes.
That was so long ago. But the idea of the slower pace of business in Africa, it's much slower. Do you find that this this affects your own interactions and how you deal in your company?
For me at first, personally, it was irritating because I'm trying to think of the best word, but that's what it's going to be. It was irritating or frustrating because I'm like, can't you just send back an email?
Because what, please?
I would say, like, can't you just send back the email, or can't you just respond? Like, how hard is this? Right. But it was learning this over time and understanding that the conversation and the pace by which they make their decisions is a part of their regular living. And if I can't respect that, how can I think that I'm going to be able to respect them as a customer? So I always give, in general, what I expect to receive. That's kind of how we're raised. But when you give and you expect and you're open to the reciprocation according to them, it's much more helpful to be respectful and understanding of others as they're trying to do whatever with you in business. For me personally, I try to teach others as well to just already put in your head, you have your steps. We all do this. We have our whole action plan. We have our processes already written out, maybe on Asana or Trello, if you're fancy, right? Wherever you have these things already, just make sure that you're doing your part, and then do a simple follow-up, a very like a low pressure follow-up. Just if you think you're in the loop and you're trying to wait for something to go through, a low pressure follow-up, just saying, hey, do you have any few questions that I can answer for you as you're still, thinking this through, or something of that nature. Because if they start to feel pressured, I have experienced personally and through others, a lot of loss from pressuring someone else, because they start to say, I don't want to do business with someone who's going to be down my throat all the time.
That's also fascinating. Very true. What has been the most unusual, or shall we say difficult, country in which you've done business as an American?
As an American, I would say a lot of the Asian countries, China specifically, getting used to some of the ways that things are done in respect to be very specific. I'm learning and dealing with my approach towards them. And as an American in general, many Americans think of themselves as superior. I do not, but many do. And I actually have found myself in some situations where I'm dealing with someone in China and they have that superiority because of how they are taught. And so it's offsetting. So it's a challenge because it's like, I don't think that I'm better, but I've seen some of my clients thinking that they are in some respect. And so they butt heads with someone else who thinks that they are as well, who will even argue because of what they're taught, that they are superior or they're better or their way is the right way. Or if you can't do things how I say, then I really don't want to work with you. And a lot of things like that, a lack of flexibility on both ends has resulted in something chaotic. For me, at first, it was just kind of understanding where they come from and why are we even having the conversation the way that we are? Not what the words that are being said, but if you're sending me an email, what was the thought pattern behind when you sent me this email in the first place? So I've jumped into like a lot of neurology. My nerdy side kicks in. I'm really interested in the brain and how it functions with language. So learning that there's an area in the brain called the Broca's area. It's like the front left hemisphere, and it controls speech. But it also has been found to work with social cognition. So a lot of times how we speak, our culture, our language affects how we perceive others and how we think others perceive us as well.
And what is this part of the brain called?
Broca's area.
How do you spell it? B-R-O-C-U-S?
Broca.
Oh, Broca.
Mm-hmm.
I have never heard of that part of the brain. That's fascinating also. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you could give your past self some current advice, what would you tell yourself?
If I could, I would say I had a very varied path to lead to where I am right now. And I'm pretty sure that I'll say the same thing a few years from now. I think giving myself grace to experience and acknowledge my different interests and let them form the path for me in the future, even though inside and outside of business, but particularly in business. Like I said before, I didn't really think that I would be a business owner. So giving myself the opportunity to get to that place and being humble and learning along the way. So I would tell myself, it's okay to do the things that you think don't make sense of why you're doing them. Just keep pushing forward.
That's great. Tell me a bit about the Society of International English Learners. How does that dovetail with your consulting practice? Are they two separate companies, or are these clients your business clients as well?
These are two separate companies, but many of them are clients of mine for the consulting firm as well. So with our society, we don't really teach English as a secondary language, but we work with people who have been learning English, but have done all of the studies and still feel like they can't necessarily speak as fluently as they would like to. So we do a lot of practice based on what I discussed about the Broca's area and a couple other kind of brainy based hacks that we use, practicing tips. We have somewhat of a safe space where people can practice and perfect their English. I think the biggest problem is people want to speak English to someone and be seen and revered. And so there's a lot of pressure and a lack of confidence when they are perhaps a big professional in their industry, but they come from another country. Now they're trying to say what they want to say in English, and they're stuttering or mumbling, or even though they know and they understand clearly and they know what they want to say, it's kind of breaking down that anxiety and also giving them tools to create muscle memory. I suffered a stroke during childbirth, and it led for me to have a speech impediment called aphasia. So language for me, like I said, has haunted me in some way. So I had to relearn a lot of that. And I teach others that by focusing and practicing and teaching yourself, you can better yourself more than just having a tutor in front of you and the tutor just telling you every single thing you're doing wrong. You need to get in the mud, get your feet wet, and really practice it, because that's when it'll stick to you the most.
Very interesting. It's very true. Yeah, I speak good conversational French, but I know I also have problems of, how would I really want to express this concept, because it's not my native language. And that's tough. Yeah. what do you like to do for fun? Personal level.
For fun, I like to spend quality time with my family. I think that's something that I dedicate a lot of time to when I can, because it feeds my soul. Apart from that, I really like to help others, kind of start up companies. I work with a lot of minority businesses, and just helping them to kind of put their ideas and their thoughts in a structured pattern that can produce more success. So it's kind of in this last year, I've actually had the opportunity to work with over 250,000 Black owned businesses in the United States, just really helping them. And when I say Black, I really mean even people of color, because that's really what I mean by that. But they haven't had the opportunity to perhaps take their brilliance and set it in a structure that leads towards success. So I'm trying to always hear them and help them to put that into a system. It's like, what you're saying is great. However, you don't know how to put it in a way where you can execute on it, much less have others execute underneath you.
That's fascinating. And how many countries have you visited or done business in?
I think right now we're somewhere over 62 countries, right around there. I haven't visited all of them. I wish,
right.
But that we've done business with. I probably have had opportunity to visit maybe over 12 countries. And I'm looking to kind of not repeat the same ones and go somewhere else next time.
Right. But doing business in over 62 countries, that's pretty impressive. That's at least half the world. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It really is exciting. I learned so much. One of the first things that I learned in doing business in that way was how our calendars and our seasons are so different. I was very ignorant in thinking, because in the States, you can just jump into a Target or a Walmart, or it depends where you're raised, a Publix or Kroger's or wherever it is that you are, and get a banana year round. You know, the concept of that there's seasonal fruit or seasonal produce blew my mind.
And you can't do that in other places, right?
Right.
True. You can get what's actually in the markets on the street.
That's right. That's right. And you wait year round for it. Like if you're into mangoes, you wait year round for your mango season, and then you splurge.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, insightful talk with Dr. Liz Nuñez. Thank you so much for joining us today, Liz. Thank
you so much, Philip, for having me.
So this has been Philip Auerbach. Please join us again next week for another edition of Global Gurus and their stories of international business. And to reach me and my company, it's auerbach-intl.com, AUERBACH-INTL.com. Thank you.